So thank you all for coming and joining us at this press conference. I'm Suzanne Roy. I'm the Executive Director of the American Wild Horse Campaign. We're the largest wild horse protection organization in the nation. We have about 600,000 followers and supporters. And we also significantly have the largest humane management program for wild horses in the world. We are doing birth control on a population of wild horses in Nevada, 3,000 horses on 300,000 acres, and we're proving that humane solutions do work for the protection of wild horses. And we're not the only ones. There are programs like this in many areas of the West. We're here today to protest the secret wild horse slaughter summit that's taking place inside, behind closed doors, or in this case, a thick black curtain, behind which our public officials are meeting, funded by our tax dollars, but the public is shut out of this event. Key stakeholders like wild horse advocacy groups here today, and the American public, which of course is the largest stakeholder in the public lands management debate, is being left out in the cold. This is not a science conference. It's a collection of politicians and lobbyists for the agriculture industry, and the sole purpose is to advance their agenda of slaughtering America's wild horses. This is an agenda that's opposed by 80% of the public. The vast majority of citizens in this country and the state of Utah oppose killing wild horses and support protecting them and humanely managing them on our public lands. So that's why the public has been shut out, but there can be no viable solutions crafted when large segments of the public and key stakeholders are left out of the debate. People joining us here today, I'm going to be followed by several other speakers who will talk about the wild horse issue, and as well as humane solutions that are available as an alternative to essentially putting our federal government in the horse slaughter business when 80% of the public is opposed to that. So the next speaker is going to be Simona Netherlands. She's also with the American Wild Horse Campaign, and she is going to talk next.
Everyone, thank you so much for being here. So let's talk real quickly about honesty. There is nothing honest about this Wild Horse Slaughter Summit that is taking place here. We, as wild horse welfare organizations, have tried to get in. We've asked nicely. We have sent emails, and we were just there at the entrance, and we were told no, and we were told we are not allowed to film inside of the Marriott. So here we are, outside, representing 80% of the American public, because it is the public whose lands these wild horses roam on. The biggest stakeholder is the public of America, and 80% of them is who we represent. So, you know, you will hear a lot as the press, you'll hear the word humane euthanasia. So we are all for humane euthanasia. What that means is a peaceful injection of a chemical that slows the heart so that an animal can mercifully have mercy and sleep in when they are sick and when they are dying. What we are talking about here today is the killing, the slaughter of healthy wild horses who are cherished by the public of America. So please don't be fooled by that word. Also, what is being touted at this conference is our wild horses are starving. Well, please take it from us that if wild horses were starving in any way, we would be the first ones to tell you about that, because we care about wild horse welfare. We have seen thousands and thousands of wild horses coming off the range in beautiful condition, some even fat, and we have healthy ranges out there. Please don't fall for that fabrication of wild horses are starving. Wild horses are also not overpopulated. In comparison to less than 65 or 67,000 wild horses on the range, we also have 2 million cattle on those same public lands. And the problem here that really everything stems from is that the wild horses have to live on allotments that are that permittees have. And these permittees feel as if the wild horses are a nuisance and competition for them because there's no money in it for them. So there's nothing in it for these ranchers that have these allotments to have wild horses on them. So we say, give us an open summit where we can discuss true and real solutions. And those solutions include working with the ranchers and perhaps making it worthwhile for them to have wild horses on their allotments, and perhaps making them work with us towards humane darting of PZP, which is a perfectly good population management tool that is humane, that can be darted in the wild, and it is not expensive, and it shouldn't be just whisked off as too difficult, because with 5 volunteers, our organization this year has darted more wild horses than all of the BLM did last year. So they truly haven't explored the humane solutions that are available and that have been researched for 30 years. So we ask you as the press, don't fall for the words that you hear. Don't fall for wild horses are starving or the overpopulation, because these are legislators that for years and years have been staunch promoters and proponents of the slaughter of our American wild horses. And they'll try to disguise that, but if you ask Rep. Chris Stewart's office right now, you know, if this amendment will allow for the slaughter of wild horses on the ranges, he will say yes. It will allow for them, for the killing, for the shooting on our wild horses that are still on our ranges today, as well as the selling out the back door from holding facilities where so many wild horses are already stuck right now. So I'm going to introduce you to our next speaker now. This is Ginger Catherines, our good friend from the Cloud Foundation. Come on over, Ginger.
Really. Well, thanks everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for holding up the signs of healthy wild horses on our public lands, which is what we continue to see. 23 years ago, I never dreamt that I would be standing here in front of a hotel in Salt Lake City, and behind me would be a closed conference, invitation only, of people that hate wild horses and burros, and yet their task, as they stated, is to come up with solutions. Unfortunately, the solutions that we're looking at are not solutions that we would have anything to do with. Some of the organizations represented, besides politicians that hold negative opinions about wild horses and burros, are the Farm Bureau, the NRA, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, etc., etc. There is no support of wild horses among these groups that are inside this building. And I think, bottom line, wild horses don't belong to the NRA. They don't belong to the National Cattlemen's Beef Association or any of those organizations. Who do wild horses belong to? They belong to us. They belong to the American public. And yet the American public's voices are locked out. I serve on the BLM's National Wild Horse and Burro Advisory Board as their humane advisor. And I was not invited, nor were any people that have humane solutions. The truth has been locked out, and the agenda is clear. And some of the myths they perpetuate are that the wild horses are starving, and Simona mentioned that. Recently, there was a roundup in southern Utah where Congressman Stewart says the horses are starving. I don't know whether any of you saw the video of the roundup of these horses. They were gorgeous, beautiful animals, running for their lives before a helicopter, but certainly not starving, and they certainly did not need to be removed. This is the case all over the country, and I have, or had, somebody stole my pictures. I have pictures from, yeah, okay, great, super, thank you so much. We have been on the ranges right now, right as we speak. I mean, today, Jeannie Nations is out in Nevada, and she's documenting wild horses on the ranges. Wild horses that likely will lose their freedom. Does this look like a wild horse that is starving? Jeannie took this picture on August 15th. This summer, I spent quite a bit of time in an area called the Red Desert in central Wyoming. This was the first band of horses that we saw there. Do these horses look like they're starving? These are a beautiful band of Gruya horses, a very Spanish herd in Kirk's Mountain, which is identified as being a Spanish colonial herd. Nearby in Green Mountain, do these horses look like they're starving? These are a family, again, a stallion and his mares and little one in Green Mountain. If these horses are slated for removal this fall, and if they are removed, they will leave one horse for every 1,000 acres. Wild horses are not overpopulated. They just came up with, BLM just came up with this number, 26,710, not 11, 710. And that's the number of horses that they would allow on our public lands in the West. Let me give you another example in Nevada. If the roundup takes place this fall, the appropriate management level, which we think is an inappropriate management level, would be 60 horses. Do you know how big Silver King is in Nevada? It is 600,000 acres. It would leave one horse for every 6,000 acres. So the myth of starvation, the myth of overpopulation. Wild horses live on only 11% of BLM lands. So there's another myth. Wouldn't you think they're overrunning the country? They're doing damage, trampling crops, overrunning small western communities? Nothing could be farther from the truth. They live on 32.6 million acres, 11% of BLM lands. This is a smokescreen in here, you guys, for the millions of head of privately owned livestock that are damaging our public lands on nearly 100% of BLM lands. But the horses must go. The helicopter contractors must be called in, and the massive roundups must begin. BLM commissioned a $1 million study, the National Academy of Sciences study. And in that study, they talk about something called compensatory reproduction. That means when your populations get low, your reproduction goes up. And that is what has happened on our ranges. BLM has managed these horses at non-genetically viable numbers of 150 to 200, underneath that genetic level. And the mares respond by what? They have more foals. So talk about $1 million misspent. So how do we turn this around? Simona and others have talked about solutions. We haven't talked about this solution. 22 million acres have been taken away from wild horses over the last few decades. 22 million acres. Let's put those short-term horses not in the ground, not dead with a bullet in their head, but back out on the lands that have been stolen from them. They are geldings and mares, so they are non-reproducing herds, so we're not going to have any growth, but they will get what they should have deserved, to live and die on the range. And that is why we support PZP, to limit births to the level of mortality. It works. Suzanne knows it works. Simona knows it works. And anybody who's ever been a darter knows it works. I'm a darter. Volunteers are willing to go out and dart these in consort with BLM. But BLM spends 0%. And if you look at our press kit that hopefully you got, in my book as an advisor on the BLM Advisory Board, I got the budget. The current budget that we're operating on right now. And do you know what percentage fertility control or on-the-range management gets in that budget? Any guesses? 0%. They spent $167,000 this fiscal year on fertility control. And where they spent that money? No roundups. Zero population growth in the prior mountains where I documented Cloud throughout his entire life. Zero mortality and the birth rate equal each other. No removals. No removals in the McCullough Peaks of Wyoming. No removals in the Spring Creek herd of southwestern Colorado. But $167,000 is not enough money to make a difference. And so they're looking for, inside this building, easy solutions. easy solutions rather than the hard work of managing our wild horses and burros on the range. So there is a silver bullet in all this and a silver lining, and it's known as the American public. The American public does not want their wild horses mutilated, murdered, slaughtered, shot, or gunned down from helicopters. And the American public must speak up now, loud and clear. All of us have to call our congressional representatives and our senators every single day until the kind of agenda that these cruel people want is off the table forever. Thank you.